The series opens with Hilda going on an adventure with her little best friend, Twig. She comes across a troll rock and decides to draw it as it never comes down this far from the mountain. When Twig sniffs the rock, he suddenly senses a troll is alive and wants Hilda to go back. Hilda comforts him and eases his worries, assuring him the troll can't even think about eating them right now because it's still daylight. Hilda then commands Twig to hang a bell on its nose to alert them once the rock awakens consciousness so that they can run for their lives. Hilda spends many hours drawing a rock troll until night comes and she decides to draw one more page before returning back home. Unfortunately, it is time for the rock troll to wake up, causing the bell to jiggle, and they both begin to escape. After being chased by a troll for a while, Hilda arrives at her house thinking she lost the troll. Nonetheless, the troll appears behind Hilda, but it doesn't harm her, and it seems like something has annoyed him. Hilda finds out that it is the bell hanging on its nose, which the troll can't get off since its hands are too short. Hilda then approaches the troll to remove the bell. Suddenly, the troll captures Hilda, attempting to eat her, but it just opens its mouth to return Hilda's sketchbook back to her. Later that night, the woodman enters Hilda's house without knocking and also brings 3 pieces of wood for her. Hilda's mom complains about the woodman, as he never knocks before coming in, which is rude, but he doesn't care what she says and proceeds to read his book like he's the one who pays the bill. Hilda goes to close the door, and at once, the door is knocked again. She finds no one when she opens it, but there is a tiny letter left for her. This is the 6th one that Hilda receives from the hidden people, and the letter informs Hilda that she should move from this place or they will smash her house, just like the previous 5 letters she received. Hilda writes a letter to send back to the tiny people, asking them to leave her alone and stop being mean. The woodman then leaves the house as he can't read with all these distractions, and Hilda and her mom decide to finish their dragon panic game. Because Hilda and her mom refuse to move, on that night, the tiny people raid their house as a warning. Hilda's mom doesn't like this and plans to move to the city, but Hilda protests, wanting to stay in this wilderness as she loves it here. Seeing Hilda beg her to stay, the mom agrees, but she will move out if the attack happens again. Thus, Hilda writes another letter to the tiny people, asking why they are so mad at her and her mom. Hilda wants to fix the problems between them if there are any so they all can live in peace. While sleeping, Hilda is approached by one of the tiny people who reveals he is a writer, but Hilda can't see him because the tiny people take the business of who sees them and who doesn't very seriously. He lets Hilda sign the contract in order to see the tiny people. Once it's done, the man reveals himself to be a tiny elf, also known as Alfor. He brings Hilda outside, and she is surprised to see many tiny houses of elves around her house. Alfor describes that there are 15 counties in this valley alone, and Hilda's house is smack in the middle of one of the elves' houses. Hilda wonders why they're getting mad now, and Alfor explains it's because of the new prime minister who promised to get rid of Hilda if he was elected. Now that he is elected, he has to deliver on his promise. Hilda wants Alfor to bring her to meet the prime minister to fix this, but as it is the middle of the night, he refuses. On the other hand, she can't just go and say hello to the prime minister, so Alfor decides to arrange a meeting with the mayor tomorrow, who might be able to help with the prime minister. The following day, Hilda arrives to meet the mayor to negotiate about getting along with each other. However, the mayor can't consider this as it is out of his hands, and only the new prime minister can do this. The mayor doesn't tell Hilda where the new prime minister is until she threatens not to give back his cat, so he tells Hilda to go behind the waterfall, the great big one that goes into the fjord. Everyone is scared of Hilda when she approaches the prime minister, but Hilda calms them down, informing them she is here to find a way for them all to live together in peace. However, they show hatred toward Hilda and don't want her to stay around them because the lights from her house are much too bright at night, and they are annoyed by Hilda's loud voice. So Hilda promises she will turn off the lights earlier and keep their voices down, but it's not quite as simple as that, the prime minister says. The prime minister reveals Hilda and her family have been considered sworn enemies of the king, and fixing the problem in this situation is also out of his hands. Hearing this, Hilda leaves the place in despair, and soon she asks Alfor to tell her where the king lives, if possible. Alfor lets her know that would violate every protocol, but as he sees Hilda is upset, he decides to take her to the king and plans to leave the day after tomorrow at sunrise. When Hilda arrives home, her mom informs her that she can't stop thinking about the threat, and she will take a little trip to the city tomorrow and look around. Later that night, Hilda can't bring herself to sleep, and suddenly she sees the midnight giant staring at her house. She quickly goes to get her sketchbook to draw, but the giant has already disappeared. As it is rare to see the giant, Hilda can't let him escape and jumps on a flying creature to catch up with him. Hilda is curious why the giant always keeps coming here, as she saw him staring at her house 2 times already. The giant replies he is waiting for his old friend, a lady, and as he doesn't see her show up, he thinks he may have got the date wrong. The giant seems so upset when he talks about it, and later he brings Hilda back to her house. The following day, Hilda and her her mom go to the city to see their new place and Hilda's new school. When they arrive back home, the woodman comes to their house with pieces of wood again and doesn't give a damn about anyone. The woodman asks for Hilda's book when she moves, but she refuses, saying she isn't going anywhere. After her mom leaves, Hilda questions the woodman if he has seen a giant roaming the valley. In his reply, he says he doesn't come here for conversations. However, Hilda follows the woodman, asking him to help her figure out what is going on with the giant, since he has read many books about giants and she knows he can help with that. The woodman takes a book of giants for Hilda to read, and he explains those giants were the first things to live in these valleys long before people. Hilda then comes across the page that has one of the giants she met last night, and it is revealed that those giants are the guardians of the earth. Currently, only one guardian is left to serve, and it is the giant Hilda has met, known as Jorgen. Hilda is curious where all the giants have gone, and the woodman says when people appeared and built towns, giants would accidentally step on them, causing the people to strike the giants, and they chose to leave. Until now, no one knows where they all went. This led Jorgen to guard the entire planet all on his own, and no one told him that everyone else was gone, including the lady giant he arranged to meet, who was also gone without his knowledge. The next day, Hilda and Alfred go on an adventure to meet the king. With hundreds of miles left, Hilda thinks it might take them a long day, so she decides to take a flying creature for their ride. Soon after, they crash into snow on the mountain where the king lives, and Hilda approaches the king to end their conflict peacefully. However, the king is scared when he sees Hilda and retreats into his castle, excusing his hands are full. Furious, Hilda screams at the king he doesn't have hands, but suddenly her scream causes an avalanche to fall down, revealing a hidden cave that was covered by snow. When Hilda goes into the cave, she hears a female voice asking Hilda to reveal herself. The mountain begins to move, causing the king's castle to fall from the cliff, but Hilda saves it just in time. However, the mountain is revealed to be a giant, and when Hilda realizes this, she asks the giant if she is looking for Jorgen, and indeed she is. The giant has been waiting for Jorgen for so long but hasn't seen him come. Hilda tells her Jorgen has been coming there for days, and the giant thinks the snow must have blocked her ears. Hilda then escapes from the giant's finger when she scratches her ear, causing her to fall off the cliff, but she is luckily saved by Jorgen. Eventually, Jorgen and the female giant reunite. It is also revealed they are lovers, and Jorgen's girlfriend explains why the other giants left. In the past, she couldn't bear to leave with the others, so she came to the spot where she and Jorgen arranged to meet. She sat and waited for Jorgen until she was covered in snow, and Jorgen realizes she has been waiting for him for 4,000 years. Finally, the Elf King decides to end the conflict between Hilda and his people as a way to repay Hilda for saving his life. Hilda joyfully goes to her mom and tells her they don't have to move anymore, but unfortunately, their house is crushed by Jorgen. So, they choose to move to the city, and Alfred also comes with Hilda. The next day, Hilda and her friends are camping together, and they are approached by a creature, but it's just her mom who comes to ask Hilda to go out for a walk. While walking, Hilda pretends to cough due to car smoke, but her mom knows Hilda is just being dramatic to accuse leaving the house is not good for her. The mom plans to bring Hilda to a big parade in the evening, assuming she will find more fun in the city than in the wilderness. They then come across a bunch of kids playing together, and Hilda's mom convinces her to go and make some new friends. Hilda introduces herself to the kids and asks to be friends with them. Later, they bring Hilda to play childhood games like knocking on people's doors and using their legs to kick the can. The kids then start picking up rocks and throwing them to knock down birds. Suddenly, they manage to knock down a raven, causing Hilda to get mad at them, and she carries the raven back to her house. Hilda is surprised to hear the raven can talk, so she brings him to her tent and has him sign a contract to be able to see Alfred. Alfred then asks for the raven's name, but he doesn't remember anything, assuming he has lost his memory. However, he remembered there is something he needs to do, and he has to be exactly where he needs to be, yet he has no clue what it is. When he concentrates to remember, he sees a statue of a bald, bearded man with a cape, and with that information, Hilda will help him find the statue. At the same time, the mom secretly listens to Hilda's conversation and tells her it's time for the parade. When Hilda leaves her room, her mom pretends to forget her wallet and goes to Hilda's room to see who she was talking to. The mom is surprised to see there is a raven in her house, and she leaves the raven on the fire escape. Alfred, who is also outside the house with the raven, suggests they should take this chance to find a statue by themselves, but the raven has forgotten how to fly, so they choose to walk instead. Soon, Hilda and her mom arrive at the parade, and there is a statue of a raven that looks exactly like the raven Hilda befriends. The mom tells Hilda this is the Great Raven, who blesses the city by flying over the parade every year, and if the Great Raven doesn't show up, the city will have a very bad year. Hearing this, Hilda reveals the Great Raven is in their house, and she begins to panic when she realizes her mom put the raven out. Knowing that the raven heads to a bald man statue, she and her mom quickly go there as well. Meanwhile, the raven comes across across some cats, causing him to flee and arrive in front of a bald man statue, but he doesn't realize it yet and thinks he is lost. Suddenly, Trevor, a boy whom Hilda befriends, kidnaps the raven to show his friends that the raven can talk since they thought he was hallucinating, and Hilda arrives as soon as they leave. Trevor brings the raven to his friends without realizing only he and Hilda can hear the raven talk, and he makes himself look like an idiot while trying to prove it to them, so he takes the raven somewhere else. Hilda, who is on top of the building, catches a glimpse of Trevor carrying the raven with him, and as Hilda's mom realizes he is headed for the Bronstad Lane footbridge, she brings Hilda to him by taking the shortcut. Trevor is mad at the raven for not talking and accidentally drops him into the lake. Fortunately, Hilda arrives in time, telling the raven he is the great raven, and jumps into the water to help him. Suddenly, the water glows, and the raven emerges bigger than before with Hilda on his back. The raven reveals he is actually not the great raven and explains that a long time ago, he was passing over the city and landed on a bald man statue. The people thought he was the raven of the god they worship, and that year there was a great harvest, and everyone prospered. They thought it was his doing, so the following year they started this festival in his honor. He suddenly missed 1 year of the festival, which caused everything to go bad, leading everyone to think they had displeased him. So he decides to make the effort to show himself every year. The raven lets Hilda know he is the Thunderbird and brings Hilda back to her mom. That night, Hilda, her mom, and Alfor enjoy the view of the parade together. The following day, the mom gets Hilda ready to bring her to join the Sparrow Scouts. Hilda promises the oath to the Sparrow leader, and after Hilda has taken the oath, the leader orders Frida to help her wear the sash. They start to play a sting ball game, as it is a tradition of the Sparrows when there is a new recruit. The leader then announces their first badge challenge of the year, which is the Friend of the Park badge. To earn this badge, it will require a team effort, and the leader allows them to form a team of 3 people. Each team will be responsible for a cleanup and beautification project in the city park, and each project must be completed in 1 weekend. Frida quickly raises her hand and volunteers to be a team leader, choosing Hilda as her first member because she will earn 5 points for her level 3 friendly badge since Hilda is a new kid, and she chooses David to complete her team. Frida then shows her plan to the team, which involves cleaning up the plot of land at the far edge of the park and planting a garden the next morning. When tomorrow comes, they start pulling off the plants to clear the land and set up a garden bed. Many hours have passed, and Frida asks Hilda to finish the setup the next day while they take the dirt to the mulching center. After they leave, a living onion known as Vitra suddenly appears in the dirt. The next day, they discover all their work has been destroyed, and immediately a Vitra emerges from the bush with a spade, ready to attack them. The Vitra surrenders the spade when Twig intervenes to stop him, and he reveals they have dug up his friends, who are Vitras that were at the mulching center. While they argue, the Vitra suddenly steals Frida's sash and escapes underground. Without hesitation, Frida jumps into a pit to retrieve her sash. Hilda gets a rope for David to pull her back later, and she also jumps into a pit to find Frida. In the underground, Hilda comes across the Vitra and has a hard time catching him as there are many paths. Eventually, Hilda reaches him, and the Vitra offers to make a deal with her. He will help Hilda find Frida if she returns his friends. They later find Frida stuck in a rabbit hole and quickly free her. Frida appreciates Hilda's effort in coming to save her, and they all make their way to the mulching center. However, they arrive too late as the center is already closed. But when the Vitras are about to be crushed by the mulching machine, they decide to sneak in, and Hilda quickly goes to save them. Hilda manages to rescue all the Vitras in time, and they plant the Vitras back into the dirt. All of this causes them to fail the assigned badge challenge, and that night, a rock that David had brought from the park suddenly begins to move. However, it is a baby rock troll, and as the mother troll realizes her baby is gone, she digs into the underground to avoid the protection wall and makes her way to the city. The next day, Hilda's mom comes to school for parents' night. Hilda brings knit tins as her collection, and David brings rocks as his, but he doesn't realize one of the rocks is a troll. The mom is surprised to see Alfor is also with them, and Alfor is here to write a report on Hilda's school as the elves are very interested in what Hilda does every day. The teacher then begins with a short film about the history of the school, but suddenly the projector breaks down, and Hilda assumes someone might have thrown David's rocks at it. The teacher doesn't think it was someone. She believes Hilda is the one who did this since she was standing closer to the rocks, and the teacher takes the rocks to keep them inside the desk. All this time, Hilda thinks the teacher loves her, but Frida reveals she doesn't as Hilda isn't the best at following the rules. Suddenly, they hear a noise coming from the desk that has the rocks in it and start to realize David has a troll rock in his collection. They set up a plan to get the troll back to the city's wall, and Hilda gets Alfred to help unlock the desk. When David takes the troll out, immediately the troll makes a mess in a room, causing them a tough time to stop him. The troll later escapes into a vent, and Hilda chooses to go after him, but since the vent is too small, she can't fit in. However, Alfred declines when Hilda asks him to go after after the troll, and they panic when they realize the mother troll has arrived at the school to find her baby. At that time, the teacher brings Hilda's mom to talk about moving Hilda to a small transitional class that can offer more personal attention, as she can't accept Hilda's behavior. When Hilda sees the mother troll outside, she quickly goes to open the vent for the baby troll to get out and stops the teacher from calling for an emergency, which would make the situation worse. As Hilda knows the mother troll came here only for her baby, Hilda hands over the baby troll back to the mother, and she leaves peacefully. Eventually, the teacher decides to let Hilda stay in the same class and not tell anyone about the trolls. The following day, Hilda and her friends come to a sewer to explore the subterranean urban area to impress their Sparrow Scout leader and create this badge for them. Suddenly, Frida and Hilda are dragged by the creatures, leaving only David alone, and he finds out there are many rats covering him, but it is just David's nightmare. On that morning, Frida plans to ride a bike for the weekend, yet Hilda finds it boring and wants to explore something they have never seen before. When Hilda sees a teenage girl standing alone in front of them, she believes there is something odd about her. They follow the girl, and suddenly she disappears, leaving David horrified. David tells Hilda he has been dreaming about nightmares all week, and actually, it is because of Hilda, as she has always dragged him to see something weird or told something creepy, like how the city has so many rats, which causes him to dream about the rats last night. Hilda swears she will help David get rid of his nightmare, and she plans to go find the Rat King. They then arrive at the sewer, and immediately the water floats them to the rat's nest. The rats later show up, asking to trade secrets with the kids, as they are the keepers of all the secrets rats overhear from humans. Frida and David don't have any secrets, so Hilda decides to whisper her secret to the rats. Hilda's secret satisfies the rats, and they also have a good one for Hilda, which they reveal. The one responsible for David's nightmares is the teenage girl. On that night, Hilda and Frida investigate the teenage girl at David's house. When Frida catches a glimpse of the girl, she quickly informs Hilda, and Hilda immediately gets David into position. From the top of his house, David reports that the girl is way down at the end of Nut 10 Avenue, turning left. Frida gets a bike to help Hilda follow the girl, and soon they arrive at Holderwood. Hilda and Frida climb up the fence and come across the girl telling her friends about how she made fun of David by causing him nightmares. Upon seeing this, Hilda goes to confront them, but they immediately turn into spirits and disappear. As tomorrow arrives, Hilda and her friends come to the library to find a book about the girl. The book is called Tales of the Mara, and the Mara are nightmare spirits said to haunt Holderwood. According to the book, Mara visits sleeping humans at night and create nightmares based on their fears. The book also says the Mara will pass over them if they strap themselves into bed with a leather belt. Hilda thinks belting themselves into bed is no way to live, and she decides to have a talk with the Mara. Hilda later disguises herself as David to get into his room, and she pulls Frida up to help her in this game. Hilda shares her plan with Frida. She will sleep in David's bed to make the Mara think she is David, and Frida will hide under the desk where the Mara can't see her, also belting herself to protect from the Mara. Since the Mara always enter through the keyhole, Hilda orders Alfred to guard it. Later that night, the Mara enters David's room, alerting Alfred to her presence, and he quickly wakes up Frida. Frida then uses the Mara's weakness, which is the leather belt, to tie her leg, but the Mara becomes aware of Frida in time. This leads Hilda to successfully trap the Mara's leg in one place. When the Mara refuses to leave David alone as Hilda requests, Hilda insults the Mara for targeting David and assuming her friends are secretly laughing at her, since the Mara reveals David is an easy target to scare. Hilda challenges the Mara to scare her with the Mara's nightmare game, and they make a deal. Hilda allows the Mara to scare her as much as the Mara wants, but the Mara has to leave David alone. The Mara agrees, and Hilda begins to force herself into sleep. Unfortunately, Hilda's mom finds out that David is in her house when she hears him snoring in his sleep. The Mara begins her nightmare game on Hilda while she is asleep, using spiders and giants, but those creatures can't get Hilda to fear them. Realizing that Hilda must have one thing she fears, the Mara gets Hilda to ride a bike at full speed, traps her in a tornado, and drops her into hell. David later arrives to see Hilda suffering from her nightmare, and he wakes her up, as he can't allow Hilda to do this for him. The following day, David tells Hilda that he no longer has a nightmare, and when Hilda sees the Mara, she goes to ask how the Mara knew her secret. The Mara reveals she got Hilda's secret from the Rat King, which means Hilda had told the Rat King what she was afraid of before. Many days passed, and Hilda and her friends devised a plan to earn the botany badge. They needed to identify and collect samples of 10 local plants to earn it. They go to the park to collect various kinds of plants, and Hilda suggests they should search for a rare plant called blue nettles. Frida mentions blue nettles are not present in the city. David, however, replies he has seen one, but he suggests they leave it alone as it is haunted. David has overheard the ghost's conversation about the weather, but they are invisible. Excited by this information, Hilda convinces her friends to investigate further. Upon their arrival, Hilda realizes that elves are living around the blue nettles. They are suddenly attacked by the elves, causing them to run, but David is captured. Frida can't go back to help David, as the elves are waiting to strike her, and not being able to see the elves is a big problem for her. So, Hilda gets Frida to sign a contract that will enable her to see the elves and help rescue David. Hilda informs Alfor of this information, and he realizes they are the lost clan of the northern counties. Alfor is excited to know this, and he says that finally, the contracts can be signed. Hilda wonders about the contract, so Alfor tells a tale. There were two elf families who met at dawn on an ancient plot of land with the purpose of executing a real estate contract. The Aldrich family wished to buy a parcel of land, and the Braga family wished to sell it. Both families signed the contract in triplicate and took it to the king for his approval. However, the king realized the Braga family had only signed twice. In those ancient days, it was considered treason to bring an unfinished contract before the king, and as a result, the Braga family was exiled from the land. With the contract unfinished, the king declared the plot to be no elf's land, and to this very day, it remains untouched, neither bought nor sold. When they arrive to meet those elves, Alfor informs Bartel, the leader of the Braga family, that his exile is over if he signs the contract. Bartel refuses to sign, stating after being exiled, the Braga family swore they would never sign any contract again. Bartel later finds out that Alfor is an Aldrich, and his family tried to buy the no elf's land for the Braga family, which is why he is here to get Bartel to sign the contract. Bartel accuses Alfor's family of being responsible for their exile, so he challenges Alfor to take down 10 of his rabbit warriors if he wants to leave this land. Frida intervenes to calm them down, saying contracts always have loopholes, and she asks Bartel to give them a day to find a solution that will make everybody happy. Bartel agrees, but he keeps David with him to ensure that Hilda and her friends come back. Frida finds a loophole in the contract, which states, an elf contract is null and void if destroyed by the fire of a lindworm. Alfor reveals lindworms are very rare to find, so they go to the library to find a book about lindworms. According to the book, they discover there is only one lair of lindworms remaining in the city, which is in the middle of the sea. They make their way to the lair using the water spirit, and Hilda gets closer to the lindworm to burn the contract. However, she accidentally steps on a piece of wood, waking up the lindworm. The lindworm immediately realizes they are here to get out of the elf's contract, and she is tired of giving away her talent for free. Hearing this, Hilda offers the plants that she collected from the park to the lindworm. These plants are considered rare, especially for the lindworm, as she hasn't been able to muster up the energy to go back to the city. The lindworm accepts the offer and decides to burn the contracts for them. Alfor brings the burned contract to Bartel, declaring his exile is finally over, and Bartel can move back into the elf's land. However, Bartel doesn't want to leave this place and chooses to give the land to Alfor instead, if his family still wants it. Alfor is surprised that Bartel would cede his ownership with nothing in return, but Bartel reveals he has his own way of sealing deals. That night, Bartel celebrates with a party and toasts with Alfor for the contract. A few days later, David and Hilda audition for the Warblers, and in a flashback, it is shown David didn't make it to the stage last year. When it is David's turn to perform, he slowly makes his way to the stage, but unfortunately, a bug flies into his mouth, causing him to stumble over the drums. David is upset that he messed up this audition again, yet Hilda comforts him, convincing him to do another audition. Later, Hilda goes to see her mom at the hardware store, where her mom has a new job. Since her mom is too busy, she suggests that Hilda should go to the library. While searching for a place to read a book, Hilda suddenly comes across a hidden library room and finds a book titled How to Aid and Keep Thy Friends Forever. The book suggests that Hilda can solve various problems for her friends using spells and charms. She discovers a page titled How to Ensure a Friend's Success in a Chosen Endeavor and finds it interesting. Hilda decides to try this enchantment on David to help him with his next Warbler's audition. She copies the page she needs, which states the enchantment is easily performed by an inexperienced novice and requires an enchanted tied mouse. Hilda follows all the steps outlined in the book. First, she cuts enough of David's hair to fashion a small net. Then she takes an item belonging to David, which is his whistle. Hilda goes to the tide pool and places the hair and the item at the edge, chanting out loud with vigor. With everything done, Hilda leaves it be until dawn. The next day, Hilda quickly returns to the tide pool and finds the enchanted tide mouse under David's hair. She brings the tide mouse to David, and due to the power of the enchantment, the tide mouse remains unseen by everyone except Hilda. When David begins to perform for the Warblers, everyone is shocked by his majestic voice, and he is immediately accepted into the Warblers. Later, Hilda arrives home to play the Dragon Panic game with her mom. She is upset to see her mom unable to find any design work in the city, which forces her to work at the hardware store. Hilda decides to enchant a tide mouse for her mom to help her achieve her dream. The following day, her mom joyfully informs Hilda she has been hired by the city City Bellmakers Corporation as a graphic designer for their citywide ad campaign. Frida later visits Hilda and tells her that something is wrong with David. Hilda realizes that it might be because of her enchantment. They discover that Hilda has missed a footnote in the enchantment book, which mentions side effects such as blanked out eyes, occasional growling, or a fine mist rising from the enchantee's scalp. These side effects indicate the soul is preparing to be forfeited to the enchanter for eternity. Hilda panics upon hearing this, but learns there is a way to break the enchantment. The footnote states if the enchanted Tide Mouse is returned within 30 days, the enchantment will be broken. It also mentions the enchanter must perform the chant out loud with vigor, but it only works at moonrise, and the disenchantment must be completed within an hour to take effect. Frida and Hilda devise a plan to break the enchantment the following night. As the night falls, David and Hilda perform for the audience. After David finishes singing, Hilda starts chanting out loud with vigor, making her look crazy to everyone, and the tide mice are now visible to each person. Hilda quickly takes her mom and David to the tide pool, where they say the chant twice. Suddenly, dark clouds form in the sky, and lightning strikes them. As the final step, Hilda feeds the tide mice with bread, and finally, the enchantment is broken. The next day, Frida calls David and Hilda to come to her house and see the mess in her room, which she doesn't know the cause of. Hilda believes it might be a ghost and decides to catch the ghost when it returns. However, they don't know how to monitor the room while Frida is sleeping, so David suggests using his dad's old video camera for this plan. After the room is cleaned, Frida discovers one of her books is missing, which happens to be the legend of the Great King Condon, and David sets up a camera to investigate Frida's room tonight. As morning comes, Frida's room is messy again. They check the camera to see what happened and are surprised to discover Frida was the one making the mess by herself. Frida admits to creating the mess, both yesterday's and today's, which leaves David wondering why Frida called them in such a panic. Frida explains the mess is supposed to be gone when she wakes up, and she thought that's just how the room works because in the past, her room would always clean itself up after a mess. Hilda tells her it doesn't work like that, and she suspects there might be a ghost, but instead of making a mess, it cleans up the room. Hilda promises Frida she will find the ghost and bring him back for her. They go to the library to find a book on how to get a ghost to come back, but the librarian doesn't recommend it. When Hilda explains they are looking for a ghost who used to clean Frida's room, the librarian wonders if the ghost took anything from the room. Frida reveals the ghost stole one of her books, which had the name Craigie Williams written inside the cover. Hilda assumes Williams took his book back and they just need to find his grave. The librarian gives Hilda a book and a wooden stick for raising the dead and tells her the location of Williams's grave. Later that night, they go to Williams's grave. Hilda convinces David to place the wooden stick on the grave while she starts chanting to wake the ghost. Suddenly, Williams appears. He explains every night he visited Frida's room to enjoy his favorite book, and he was pleased to see that Frida treasured the book just as he did. In appreciation, he cleaned the room for her every night. However, one day the book was gone, and Williams had no reason to return to Frida's room. Williams suspects his brother Jort must be the one who stole the book and awakened him from his grave, which indeed Jort did. When Hilda asks Jort to return the book, he challenges them to a wrestling match if they want it. The neighborhood ghosts awaken from their graves to act as an audience, and the wrestling match begins. After a few minutes, David and Frida are eliminated from the match, leaving only Hilda to face Jort alone. However, Hilda is no match for him, and Jort emerges as the winner. As the sun is about to rise, the ghosts quickly return to the ground, and Hilda rushes to lie on Jort's grave to stop him from going back in. She threatens him to give the book back or else he will be burned by the sun. With no choice, Jort decides to return the book to her. Frida is excited that they finally did it, but she soon realizes Jort did not steal the book she was looking for. The following day, when the school announces Frida is the new class president, they find Frida absent from there. David and Hilda go to see Frida at her house, trying to comfort her by saying it's just a messy room. Frida protests, saying it means everything to her as her parents always think she is perfect. However, Frida's behavior starts to change, leading to an argument with Hilda and David. Hilda is hurt when Frida says she is a bad friend and decides to leave with David. Later, it is revealed Frida's book was stolen by a Nisse hiding under her bed. Many days pass by as the weather begins to storm and create snow. Hilda prepares to go out and make a snow troll, but suddenly the raven knocks on Hilda's window to get in since it is very cold outside. Hilda then receives a phone call from her mom who advises her not to go outside, so she respects her mom's advice and chooses to stay home. Hilda wonders if it is normal for thunder to occur during snowstorms, and the raven tells her it happens because the weather spirits are arguing with each other. Hilda doesn't believe him and turns on the radio to listen to Victoria, the weather reporter. She hears thunder and crashing noises from the radio, which concerns her because she has never heard anything like that before. She believes something bad is happening to Victoria. Thus, Hilda arranges to go to the weather station and asks David to come come with her. When they arrive, they sneak into the place and find Victoria in her workroom. At first, Victoria thinks they are devils, but when she finds out Hilda is her biggest fan, she warmly welcomes them and gives them a grand tour. However, Victoria has hidden something in a secret room and prevents them from going in. They later discover that Victoria's station can create thunder and rain. Victoria reveals she has studied how to control the weather, which she believes will be useful for the world if they can harness that power and make it work for them. Victoria also plans to study the weather spirits and has already discovered a way to lure them out. She understands a lot about the weather spirits and explains when two of them meet, they argue and cause a storm. But when there are too many weather spirits, they create a big storm and snow, just like what is happening to the city now. However, they realize that the snow will reach 168 centimeters by nightfall. At this rate, the city will be completely buried by morning. So, Hilda decides to fly into the storm to talk to the weather spirits. When Hilda arrives, she introduces herself as their moderator and instructs them to speak one by one to avoid arguments. The weather spirits become calm and the snow stops after they're able to voice their problems without interruption. Suddenly, one of the weather spirits arrives at the station in a rage, searching for something. Hilda later discovers Victoria has captured the weather spirit's baby and is using it to lure them out. Hilda then releases the baby to its mother, causing the station to collapse and blow away. However, Hilda is still alive, though she is stuck in the weather spirit, and she falls down into the forest far from the city. While exploring the forest, Hilda comes across the woodman playing poker with the elves. Hilda knows her mom must be very worried about her, but she wants to stay a little longer in the forest. Upon hearing this, one of the elves offers to send an email to Hilda's mom, and Hilda starts writing a letter for her. Hilda later realizes the woodman has lost her in a bet against the giant in the poker game, resulting in the giant capturing her and taking her to his nest. However, the woodman lost Hilda to the giant on purpose so that she can help him reclaim his items. Unfortunately, the giant returns just in time and attempts to capture them, but they manage to escape, leading him to lose track of them. Hilda's mom stops worrying about Hilda once the mail arrives, but she still wants to go out and find Hilda herself. Seeing this, Alfor volunteers to go look for Hilda with Twig. As night falls, Hilda and the woodman come across a cabin. They find no one in the house, so they decide to settle down there for the night. The next day, Hilda finds the door is locked. She rushes upstairs to escape through the attic, but the cabin is like a maze, leading them with no way to exit. Alfor and Twig arrive to find Hilda at the giant's property nest, but don't see her there. Suddenly, they are both captured by the giant, but the raven shows up to save them and he is also here to find Hilda. However, they have no clue where to find her. Coincidentally, Twig catches a glimpse of the cabin and alerts them about it. In the cabin, Hilda can summon everything she wants by saying the name or thinking about it. Later, Alfor and the raven arrive at the cabin, and as soon as they step in, the door closes by itself, trapping them there together. Hilda then suggests everyone summons everything they can think of to destroy the cabin's power. She realizes that the items they summon gradually fade when they summon too much, which weakens the spell. After many tries, they run out of item names and are unable to break the spell. But when Hilda yells she wants to go back home, suddenly the cabin moves and transports them to Hilda's house, where she is eventually reunited with her mom. The cabin later disappears, and the woodman makes his way back into the wilderness. At the Sparrow Scouts meeting, Frida has missed coming for the third week, which really concerns David and Hilda. The Sparrow leader announces there will be a ceremony for the Sparrow Scouts badge in a few weeks, along with a celebration of the end-of-year camping trip, and they have the opportunity to earn the camping badge. David has always desired to get this badge, and he thinks Frida might want it too. They then go to see Frida to ask her to go on the camping trip together, but Frida refuses, mentioning she will be busy on that weekend. Anyway, David asks Frida to at least hang out with them today since it has been a while since they last met. However, Frida is now hanging out with her new friend Kelly, and she already has plans to go out with her, which really upsets David. Hilda's mom later takes Hilda to buy camping supplies and a bunch of snacks for her. While walking back home, Hilda comes across a Nisse, a house spirit who lives inside people's homes. Normally, Nisse are invisible, but because he is outside, it means he has been banished. Hilda's mom advises Hilda not to talk to him. Meanwhile, Hilda goes to see Frida again, and as Frida doesn't come out, she walks until she encounters the Nisse once more, who introduces himself as Tontu. Hilda wants to know about Tontu's story, as she has heard her mom say Nisse are invisible and live in people's houses. Tontu explains Nisse are not invisible. In every home, there is a lot of wasted space, such as the space behind bookcases, gaps in the floorboards, and many more. The sum total of that space manifests itself as a kind of extra room that only one Nisse can enter. The owner of a house has the ability to banish a Nisse from their property forever if they catch them doing no good. Tontu is wrongly accused by his house owner, which leaves him with nowhere to live. Hilda wants Tontu to come and live with her, as she is sure her house doesn't have a Nisse yet. As they arrive at the house, house, Tante brings Hilda to a Nisse nest where she finds all of her lost items. Surprisingly, there is already a Nisse in Hilda's house that she has never been aware of, causing a fight to break out between that Nisse and Tante. When Hilda's mom returns home, she is furious to see everything broken and banishes Tante from the house. As evening falls, Hilda's mom takes her to the camping site, and the Sparrow leader instructs the kids to find their markers. Hilda and David soon come across Tante in the forest, and Tante, tired of encountering people, believed that coming to the forest would provide a refuge from being bothered, but it hasn't turned out that way. Suddenly, Hilda and David are called by the Sparrow leader to return to the tent, and Hilda promises to bring food for Tante later that night. When everyone is asleep, Hilda and David sneak out to bring food to Tante, but they find that he is no longer around. They then see a fire and think it's Tante's, but it turns out to be a group of Mara, with Frida also present. Seeing this, Hilda wants to save Frida from the Mara, but David refuses and walks back to the tent. While walking, David suddenly hears a noise coming from the bush and thinks it's a Black Hound, so he runs back to Hilda for help. However, it turns out to be just a frog. Hilda and David try to convince Frida to leave the Mara, but Frida hesitates. However, David decides to step up, telling Frida she is a very good friend to him who always looked out for him when he was scared, and he doesn't want her to hang out with the Mara. As David yells at the Mara, saying he isn't scared of any of them anymore, suddenly a giant dog known as the Black Hound appears behind them. Later, Kelly pushes Hilda toward the Black Hound, and the Mara quickly escape, leaving Hilda and her friends struggling to run away from it. Hilda believes the Black Hound might want something to eat, so she throws her snack to feed it, and they eventually manage to get away. The Sparrow leader then announces the situation to the Sparrow Scouts, instructing them to pack their bags and get ready to return home. However, Hilda is worried about Tante, who is out there with the Black Hound, and she asks Frida for help in looking for him. The following day, Frida and David help Hilda earn a fundraising badge for the upcoming ceremony, and Hilda also searches for Tante on the street. Hilda then catches a glimpse of someone she thinks is Tante and quickly approaches him. However, Frida reminds Hilda she needs to arrive at the Sparrow Scout Hall by 3 p.m. or else she won't receive credit for the badge. When Hilda catches up to the person she thought was Tante, she realizes it's not the Tante she was looking for, and the Nisse reveals all Nisse are called Tante. Hilda wonders why the Nisse is out here, and he explains Nisse are being banished all over town. Hilda encounters many Nisse on the street, and each of them gives the same answer to Hilda, that they are banished from the house without having done anything wrong. Unfortunately, Hilda is too late to earn a fundraising badge, and since she joined the Sparrow Scouts until now, she has never achieved any badges. On the day of the badge ceremony, Hilda asks her mom to go to the hall first, and she roams around the neighborhood to find Tante. Hilda arrives at the house where Tante was kicked out and asks the owner what Tante has done. The owner says she caught Tante stealing when she heard a noise and found him ransacking the place looking for something to steal. After a while, Hilda finally finds Tante in the bin and shows concern toward him, but Tante doesn't seem to care, which makes Hilda mad at his ungrateful behavior. She spent so much time looking for him and also lost a fundraising badge because of him. Hilda and Tante later arrive at the ceremony, and Hilda lets Tante check out this place to see if he can live here. In the nest, Tante suddenly comes across the Black Hound, who has been hiding there, and quickly exits to get Hilda away from the ceremony. Tante carries Hilda and escapes from the Black Hound by entering and exiting from one nest to another throughout every house. As Hilda realizes they have arrived at her house, she decides to stop, which causes the Black Hound to catch up to them. However, a Nisse who lives in Hilda's house comes out to defend them with a broomstick, but instead of attacking the Nisse, the Black Hound licks him, revealing the Black Hound is actually Jellybean, who was the Nisse dog. The Nisse hadn't seen Jellybean since he was a puppy. He found Jellybean a long time ago when he was little and decided to adopt Jellybean as his pet. He secretly looked after Jellybean for a while, but when his parents found Jellybean, they took the puppy away from him. However, this explains everything. Jellybean was taught how to use the Nisse spaces when he was a puppy. Every time he goes through a Nisse nest, he takes everything with him and causes havoc in whatever room he happens to arrive in. He has gone so fast, leaving the Nisse with no clue what was happening. That is why most of the Nisse are getting kicked out. When the police arrive to catch Jellybean, Hilda's mom decides to help the Nisse get Jellybean to the city walls. Unfortunately, Jellybean teleports to block the sight of Hilda's mom, leading them to fall off the road. The brakes aren't working well, which will cause them to crash into the city walls. However, the Nisse and Tante hold their hands together and manage to steer the car into a prohibited place especially for Nisse, to save them from the crash. Tante apologizes for dragging Hilda and her mom through that dangerous place, and the Nisse and his dog get separated, end up in another location. In the end, Jellybean arrives at Hilda's broken cabin and encounters the Woodman, who tells them a tale about Hilda. And this concludes the series. You can watch more videos like this by click on the middle, and I'll see you in the next video.